Hello to everyone joining us today. Welcome. Happy Water Awareness Month from the Arizona Department of Water Resources. This designation for April was established in 2008 through an executive order by the governor, and we're happy to celebrate with all of you. My name is Nemesis Ortiz de Cretz, and I am the Drought and Conservation Coordinator at the Arizona Department of Water Resources. I want to quickly remind participants to mute yourselves during the presentation so we can all hear the presenters. We have a question session after both presentations, so during that time, I would encourage anyone interested in asking to unmute themselves or ask your question in the chat, and I will read it for you. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared through the ADWR YouTube page for those who missed it. I want to give our speakers today most of the webinar time, so I will keep my introductions short and just want to let you all know before we continue that we thank all of our Water Awareness Month partners from around the state who contribute events, tips, and resources to the Arizona Water Facts Water Awareness Month website. For those interested, the link is in the chat right now. And we want to thank those who help promote water awareness in the state of Arizona. Today, we will be talking about using water conservation, water education to conserve water and protect our watersheds. Next slide, please. And our first speaker for today is Keri Schwartz. Keri is faculty with Arizona Cooperative Extension and the Water Resources Research Center at the University of Arizona and the director of the Arizona Project WET, Water Education Program, transferring knowledge focused on hydroliteracy and best institutional practices to educators, K-12 students, and community members. Take it away, Keri. I will, Melissa Sykes will be passing on your slides. We can hear you, Keri.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi, I'm Keri Schwartz, and I direct the Arizona Project WET program. I do that through Cooperative Extension at the University of Arizona, and that's a great thing because it makes it a statewide program with on-the-ground people all over the state. And so I work with a team of people to do that. I'm really happy to be here as part of Water Awareness Month and working with ADWR. So with that, I'll just go ahead and get started. And yep, thank you. So the first thing we want to note before we move on to this slide is we have a new logo. And so if you know our program, this is our new logo. And along with our new logo, we have a brand new website that's going to be launching at the end of June. So I wanted to make that note right up front. Our mission, though, has stayed the same. Our mission is to do two things: develop water stewardship and STEM learning through three pathways. The teacher professional development that not only deepens content knowledge, but evolves instructional practices, direct student outreach that's embedded or extends in classroom instruction, and community engagement. And over the last 21 years, we've reached lots of teachers, lots of students directly with 50 minutes of education, and we've been in really lots of communities. So as an extension program, we're stakeholder driven, and our main stakeholders are students, teachers, and school administrators on one hand, and water educators, conservation specialists, and water resource managers on the other. We provide the bridge between the two by being fluent in student-centered pedagogy and Arizona science standards. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not saying next. I got to get used to this. Okay, Melissa. Next, that was that one that I just talked about. You can see it later. We can go on to the next one. Okay, here we are. So we're going to start with the Arizona academic standards. Here we see the core ideas for knowing science and using science. And these are the overarching ideas for all grade levels. Okay, so okay, go ahead. Next. Yeah. And as you see in this diagram, the science and engineering practices that are driving science instruction today require students to do science. And that's always what Arizona Project WET has been about. It's been about students doing, experimenting, and doing science. So let me demonstrate some of the ways that Arizona Project WET is driving standard-based instruction. Go ahead. Arizona Project WET is and has always been about developing and using models. Students get engaged, they explore, and build their own understanding. And one of our achievements has been developing ways to understand the hidden groundwater system and dispel those misconceptions. Models help us deconstruct the system, rebuild it, and discover the relationships between the parts of the system. Next. Thanks to the need for virtual instruction, we now have a build your own basin groundwater lesson pictured over here on the right. And thanks to the U of A Department of Hydrology and Colorado School of Mines, we have a computer simulation model that we're using for instruction as well. And that's over on the left side. All this and more will be available to you through our new groundwater education program. So we have a new logo up here, and we're using our 20 years of evaluation and research on groundwater, and it'll be a brand new program that's available to you to use. Next school year, in partnership with the sorry, we'll stick on that 1 minute. See, I faked you out. Next school year, in partnership with the marketing firm Esser Design, will be producing 9 groundwater videos aimed at spurring the public to act to conserve groundwater. We believe that people need to understand our precious and interconnected resources before they care enough to conserve it. So do look for this web page. That's where the videos will be available as well. Okay, next. To spur students to ask questions and define problems, we're using a simple California Lawrence Hall of Science routine. It's called I Notice, I Wonder. It reminds me of. Using a hand lens can open up an entire unseen, unknown world for students. The I Wonder sentence starter has students asking their own questions. These questions make students want to do science. It reminds me of how students make cultural connections between their own experiences in nature and their lives at home, which is part of culturally responsive teaching. Next. In our AquaSTEM riparian habitat exploration unit, students carry out the investigations they planned in the classroom as scientists. They become botanists, water chemists, aquatic biologists, soil scientists, entomologists. We make these field days happen for participating teachers and bring mentor scientists into the community to work with the students. Next. This is another site. Rio Salado is one of them. Hacienda River Preserve is another. And we've also worked at Gilbert Riparian Preserve and Sweetwater Wetlands in Tucson. Next. We developed a new drawing protocol during the pandemic that promotes analysis and interpretation of organisms from videos. Next. Some of you work with schools to develop gardens. And you may be interested in our new Build Your Own Basin curriculum unit. It's a project-based learning opportunity that has students constructing explanations and designing solutions. And go ahead. And another generative result of the pandemic year is this Build Your Own Basin program, which brings all the equipment to put in a basin to students' homes. It's a partnership of Tucson Water, Watershed Management Group, and we're calling it the gateway drug to passive rainwater harvesting. And then one more there. Yep, and here we see that the student has actually designed their system and had to follow those protocols in order to get the kit, and now they have their own living lab to study through time. Okay, and the Build Your Own Basin program was an offshoot of our full-blown passive rainwater harvesting program. We have an online course now in the campus learning management platform that's available to anyone that's interested. Working together, we've installed 14 rain gardens based on students' designs. And these things now turn into living laboratories for teachers to innovate those science standards at schools. Here's a look at the evolution of Drachman. Yeah, thanks, Melissa. Go ahead. This is what it looks like today. Pretty cool. The Arizona academic standards also focus on cross-cutting concepts, the big ideas that cut across fields of study and subject areas. They can be used to focus on relationships or take perspectives, and they provide an organizational scheme for students thinking. So let's go ahead and see some of those. Yeah, so simple hands-on investigations like this one on impermeable and permeable surfaces enable learners to dig into structure and function, that cross-cutting concept, and look at how green infrastructure works in a built environment. Go ahead. APW lessons look at proportion, quantity, and scale of water uses in homes and across sectors. Again, water users need to know about their water supply and their water use, and then they can compare it to their friends, their neighborhoods, and make decisions to conserve water. Next. We're teaching about the shifting climate for the Southwest, warming temperatures and more extreme storms, both relevant to our water supply and to conservation. By the way, the climate was supposed to be the stable one here, not the change. Go ahead. We of course are helping teachers with the content, and we're all over the earth science and the life science, but I wanted to give you some examples of ways that we're helping teachers with the physical sciences as well. Go ahead. For instance, we have a 5-day academy on water solutions, past, present, and future with Salt River Project. And the brilliance of the SRP system is that it extends the watershed. Simple gravity brings water throughout the valley. And this makes clear that sometimes the simplest solutions are the best solutions when it comes to engineering. Yep. And on the other hand, Colorado River on the western side of our state represents a lower elevation land area. And we have a lesson called Pump It Up that presents the engineering problem. How will we get water uphill from the Colorado River to Phoenix? Go ahead. And here you can see students using the engineering design process to create a model of a system that brings water uphill across 336 miles if you go all the way to Tucson. They discover that gravity can still assist them in moving water over distances, even though they need to pump it up at multiple stages. Go ahead. So the integration into the Arizona academic standard is a key to getting water education into the schools. The second thing that Arizona Project brings to partnerships is best instructional practices and curriculum and units and lessons that follow those best instructional practices. So I'll summarize this slide to say, we want to say it in words, show it in visuals, and let them do it. All three of those things, if at all possible. We engage, we let them engage them, we let them explore, and then we explain only if we need to. And we let learners build their own understanding by driving their thinking with questions, with inquiry. Go ahead. And the last instructional practice that we use is a systems thinking approach that makes use of the way we think, or human cognition. In this diagram, you actually see a few systems interacting. There's the climate, the watershed, and groundwater systems. We teach about these separately, setting boundaries so that we can study them deeply, and only then do we look at the relationship between systems. So I use the example of how we teach about a watershed, one that most of you probably know about. Making distinctions has us studying what is something and what is it not. What is a watershed? Well, we can break it down into water and shed. It's like a tool shed, but it doesn't look like it. Water sheds off land, so it's kind of like hair shedding off a dog, but it's way different. This is how we grapple with distinctions. And after considering these basic questions, we end up with a working definition to use for greater study. And that has hand motions, if you can still see me. And it's a watershed is the land area that drains to the low points. Again, we're activating retention by aesthetic learning. Excellent. And we'll go ahead. All right, so we create models as I spoke about. This is a very simple one. You can use scrap paper to make this model. And so we go back to our definition, the land area that drains to the lowers. If that's true, what's the edge? And so we can look at that really dark green line around there and see, well, the edge is the high points. It may be mountains, but it may just be higher points than the lower points. And so if we look at that darker green line there and follow that around, that's our watershed. And now we can ask our next systems thinking question. What are the parts of a watershed? So we see those low areas where water is. We see some more ridges. We see some cities. We see some old mines. And we see some white areas. What are those white areas? Well, we got to go back to that definition. The land area. Yeah, so it's land area. And they're higher ones and they're lower ones. Excellent. So we're exploring with our model here. Go ahead. And we can explore with some of our other lessons. We can look at parts from this perspective where we're looking at 4 different watersheds that are delineated with different colors. And so when we look at this, what are the parts? Well, we still have the white area. So the land, right? The land is still part of it. The tributaries, the headwaters, the main stem. Go ahead. And we can use this lesson approach to look at, of course, specific things in Arizona. That's what we do, right? We make it real world and relevant. So here's, go ahead, some river system. And by using this technique, we can delineate the watershed of the Verde River. Go ahead. And then we ask this other question. What is a watershed a part of, right? We see the watersheds cover all of Arizona on the left. Each watershed has watersheds within it, though, like the one in the middle. Carrizo Creek watershed is actually in the Salt River, on the Salt River watershed. And all of Arizona is part of this big regional watershed that we call the Colorado River watershed. So we can see, we can gain a lot from this question as well. What is a watershed a part of? Go ahead. Then we go back to our models, right? We created this model with water-soluble markers, and now if we make it rain, we can start to look at relationships between the parts, right? So what happens when we make it rain on this model? Well, water runs from high to low. The old mine might leak metals into a river system. The city might flood or get oils and coliforms in the river. Right? So simple relationships between the parts. Excellent. And go ahead. And so a deeper look at that white area on the map, right? Those high elevation areas, we might end up looking at forests and look at, well, what are the relationships between the forest and the soils that depend on it? Go ahead. We adapted the stormwater lesson to demonstrate a normal permeable forest system. And then we can demonstrate what might happen when a hot ground fire hits that forest. The land is blackened and the water runs off faster. And this is an experiment that shows that. And go ahead, Melissa. In other words, we use hands-on experiential tools to activate learning about real world and often complex content. Go ahead. And the last of our systems thinking big areas is perspectives. And of course, you can't understand anything well without looking at multiple perspectives. So here we look at the perspective of a resident's perspective on a watershed. It might be home, neighborhood, city. A coyote or javelina's perspective might be just, it's land and water, a watershed. And then a city planner, it's really all about the permeability of impermeability and drainage. Yeah. So the bottom line is when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. All right, one more click there. All right, so using forcible rules of thinking, distinguishing ideas, building the system, relating one idea to another, and taking perspectives, we develop a language and a structure for thinking about anything you want to learn about. And with that language and structure, students can deepen their thinking about anything. So it's called systems thinking, and we call it DSRP. Go ahead. So I knew we'd come back to this diagram, so get a chance to look at it now. So we bring best practices and an intimate knowledge of the Arizona Science Standards to the table. And we'd love to partner with anybody that's interested in bringing water-related learning into K-12 schools. Go ahead. We've partnered with many cities and private water companies to deliver water savings programs. We built these programs because our partners wanted to show real water savings from their education programs. These programs have students acting to save quantifiable amounts of water. And that's over there on the right, the school water audit and home water audit. They'll be on the water scene investigations page on our new website. And this past year, we worked with the town of Gilbert on a lesson focused on the importance of leak detection. And you'll also find that among the programs on this water scene investigations webpage. And go ahead. Just wanted to show you that we've really activated this and worked on our water audits over time. And we have this new mascot, Drippy, that's helping students through the data collection and through the math. And we've been able to help students put aerators on even virtually. And this is our colleague, Holly, helping a student put on an aerator. Go ahead.
Hey, Keri, sorry to interrupt. We got about a minute left.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Just want to say, and you can go ahead there. We've kept all of our Arizona Water Festival programs, and you can learn more about that on our webpage. We haven't done it all virtually this year, and so those things are still running. Keep going there, Melissa. And to replace that hands-on event that maybe some of you are familiar with, we have these celebrations of learning, and there's value added. We've been able to get our partners doing videos that focus on water systems and water careers. So it's really been an added benefit for the students. Go ahead. And I'll quickly showcase some of the ways we've activated learning during the pandemic. This is a Plant Superheroes activity. It's a choose your own adventure type of lesson, and students are putting a plant guild together to solve a problem. Go ahead. We use computer simulations like this one to reinforce learning, like this about energy and matter. Go ahead. We're using Google Docs and drag and drop technology to activate the learning, having students still doing the kinesthetics. And so here they're looking at relationships between how the water moves within the water cycle. Keep going. We've made videos like this one about stormwater BMPs, and we have formative assessments that, again, allow students to do the clicking. They actually allow them to re-answer wrong answers, and so it's really formative learning. It's not summative learning. Go ahead. We have a new storybook. That's another way that we're trying to deliver the culturally responsible education. And you can look for this on our website. It's fully illustrated by one of our team. Go ahead. And we're using Google Docs for collaborative breakout rooms. We do a lot of collaborative breakout in our sessions. And go ahead. And that's about all I have time to share about Arizona Project WET, but please do contact us if you're interested in learning more. And there's just one last thing that I'm really proud of, and that's the fact that the University of Arizona and ASU have a long history of working together on water education. And you can't say that with the U of A and ASU very often. So I'm really pleased that I was able to, with this next team, to put together a new educational tool for use in K-12 schools and to engage the general public about watersheds. So here's the help and function of Arizona Watershed Storymap team. Take it away, guys.
Thank you so much, Keri, for this presentation. Next, we will have these presenters who will talk about the story map that Keri just mentioned. This is Susan Craig. She is a water policy analyst at ASU's Kyle Center for Water Policy at Morrison Institute. Susan drives projects on water resilience, having worked on Arizona's 3 primary state water agencies, the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, Arizona Department of Water Resources, and Water Infrastructure and Finance Authority. Susan has extensive knowledge of the state's water issues, policies, and players. We also have Rebecca Davidson. She is the director of the Southwest Region Field Program at the National Forest Foundation, where she oversees conservation efforts in Arizona and New Mexico. We have Sandra Hurlbut. Sandra has been with the University of Arizona since 2014 and with Arizona Project WET since 2017, and is the education coordinator for Arizona Project WET's Aqua STEM program. Nick Carroll at ASU's Kyle Center for Water Policy. Nick creates and manages content for publicly accessible, interactive online mapping applications related to water resources in the state. And with that, I will allow you guys to share your screen.
All right, here we go. Happy Friday, everyone, and happy Water Awareness Month. We're really thrilled to be debuting our new Watershed story map focused on the health and function of Arizona's watersheds. And as I said, it's really been a true collaboration. Definitely could not have pulled this off without the knowledge and resources of this diverse team. Sorry about that. So as we've said, the Kyle Center for Water Policy partnered with U of A, Project WET, and it's been a great partnership. Keri and Sandra from Project WET team. In addition, I know she's watching, but we also had Rachel King, who is very energetic and skillful. She's watching. She also is developed and starred in a video in the story map. And Rachel, get this, she's an ASU student working for U of A through AmeriCorps. So we were happy to have her. Having Project WET on the team really helped us, as Keri explained, have us produce a product that is beneficial to all ages and all audiences. So, teachers and students can use it, interested citizens, and with their expertise, we were able to create a more engaging resource. That systems approach that Keri talked about and ability to activate learning. We were also very fortunate to have Rebecca from the National Forest from the National Forest Foundation. With her help, we were able to better understand the forest and water connection and weave that throughout the story map. She also wrote much of the narrative and really helped us get this project off the ground and moving. So we're very grateful to have Rebecca on our team. And then Nick is ASU Kyle Center for Water Policy's GIS specialist, and he developed this beautiful story map. It's with his skill that we were able to pull together, develop these cool maps and the data that you see within. And so today, each of our topic experts is going to present on the different sections of the story map. And Nick's going to show some of the functionality and how you really engage with the story map. Again, as a team, we were really able to pull together an incredible amount of information, make it easily accessible, easy to understand. And that's the beauty of a story map. So just a couple of words on a story map. Story maps, I feel, are way cool. It's an opportunity to utilize technology, pull together a lot of information on a topic with interactive maps and cool features, multimedia, a visual narrative, if you will. It takes you on a journey of learning versus reading a paper or report. And we're able to put together comprehensive information that engages a user. So also another advantage is that many of the maps and the data are updated in real time. So it's dynamic and it's not static like a static map or report. So you're going to find the story map on the Arizona Water Blueprint website. As part of Kyle Center's efforts to develop the blueprint, we met with over 200 experts in land and water use, economic development, environmental specialists, and we got input from them. We asked them, what are the important topics? What are the stories that we really need to tell as part of this blueprint project? And watersheds always rose to the top as one of the most important topics. So we made it a priority. We worked together with this team to pull it off. If you haven't had an opportunity to check out the blueprint, I encourage you to do so. In addition to story maps, we have our viewer, our map viewer. It's probably the most popular feature of the blueprint until now with our lovely story map. But it has over 55 data layers, water resources, infrastructure, everything that you really need to learn and know about water for more informed decision-making and better policy decisions. So we utilize a lot of the data that we have in the blueprint to make the story map. We also have 4 other story maps available on our website, and we have a new groundwater level change app that's soon to be released. So a little bit about our story map before I turn it over to the experts. As you know, most of you, all of you know that watershed and forest health are integral parts of our water story. We depend on water for public health, economic opportunity, and quality of life. And any story about watersheds is a story about land and water. And changes in the land affect our water supply, our water quality. And so this map connects our water supply in Arizona to the landscapes that we depend on, both in the natural and the built environments. So we drill down into the relationship between land and water. We take you through studying forest health, devastating wildfire, and why we need to manage pollution, what climate change means for our watersheds, and Arizona's amazing biodiversity. I just have to fit in a quick fun fact that I did not know until working on this project, that Arizona, I feel like I should. Arizona has the 3rd highest biodiversity in the United States. It's really thanks to our diverse landscapes that our state has over 800 wildlife species. Anyway, I thought that was fantastic. Our story map walks you through the function of a watershed, the importance of having a healthy watershed, to promote biodiversity, provide recreation, filter pollutants, control floods, and then also what impacts health. We already talked a lot about this, but increasing temperatures, drought conditions, climate change, wildfire. And then the last section of our story map captures and provides links and ideas for getting involved. So since we're all watershed managers and we all play an important role in protecting our land and water, we wanted to have a section on that. We hope that you find that this is a valuable resource. Again, there's tons of information in here, and our team's going to walk you through and show you some of the highlights. So I'm going to pass it over to Rebecca, talk about forest section.
Thanks, Susan. I'm super excited to be here today and again, just reiterate the amazing collaborative nature of this project. And I think this is the kind of collaboration and partnership that really exemplifies getting great things done. And this is just one of many that are going on in our state, which I'm excited to see showcased as well in this story map. So obviously you can't tell the story of Arizona's watersheds without really connecting the dots to these high elevation landscapes where snow and rain fall. And these are the places, the sources of our downstream water supplies. And many of these places up north in our forested lands were set aside specifically to protect these water resources at the time in the late 1800s, early 1900s as forest reserves. Today we know these as national forest lands. And these are the places where so many of these efforts talking about forests and water really culminate. Next slide. So in Arizona, our national forests are at risk from the threat of drought, climate, insect, and particularly wildfire, which I'll talk a little bit about today. And so the health of our watershed and our downstream water supplies is really dependent on the health of these upstream locations. Next slide. The thing with fire, though, that's so interesting is that it is really a part of our history, and fire is a natural part of our ecosystem. And historically, fires, low intensity ground fires, really rejuvenated the soils and maintained, you know, sort of this more open structure that you see on the right. And so these ponderosa pine forests in northern Arizona were really resilient to fire, and in fact were fire hungry, for lack of a better word. We needed fire in the landscape to create this ecosystem function. Next slide.
Doesn't want to click.
Awkward silence. Okay. So, but you know, what we've been seeing for a lot of different reasons is that fires on our landscape in northern Arizona and across the Southwest are becoming bigger, more severe, more intense, largely due to the overgrowth of the forest structure. So instead of fires remaining on the ground, they are instead moving up into the crowns of these trees and creating large landscape scale impacts. And that, from a watershed perspective, can really be devastating. It can lower and decrease water yield and long-term sustainability. And this is important for water quality and water resiliency. We see increasing insect infestations and drastic increases in post-fire flooding, which can be devastating to downstream communities and water delivery infrastructure. The next thing we're going to see is what happens when monsoon rains fall on severely impacted fire-scarred areas. Susan's crossing fingers to see if this works. We only need to see maybe 30 seconds of this. Let's see if it works.
What happens after a fire and it rains? Wow. Look at that. That is just a rapid.
That's probably good, Susan. Oh. So the point of showing you all that little video, I'm sorry if it was a little choppy. The point of all of that is to show that there's like this direct and immediate impact from fire in a watershed condition. And all of those issues that we saw in that video have downstream impacts for us, whether we're in a local community, in a small mountain town, or down here in the valley. And so the water story map is really exciting because we take you on this journey, and we also showcase a number of case studies that a number of folks are working on that are helping to improve the resiliency of our forest from a forest, fire, and water perspective. Next slide. And one of the things that we also want to have folks interact with is not just this particular team, but all of the different folks that are working in the field related to forests, fire, and water. And this is just a small number of those folks who are, in some way involved in thinking about solutions for these issues and protecting Arizona's forests and watersheds. And we're really excited to have you interact with the map, with the different organizations and the work that we're doing. So I'm going to pass it off now to Sandra, who's going to talk about the built environment, but we're really just super excited for everyone to be involved and to interact with this map. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. So, yes, I'm going to be talking about the built environment, and our story map highlights water as a key ingredient for a thriving forest ecosystem, as Rebecca was just saying, but it's also a key ingredient for our urban environment. And the story map describes how water moves from those snow-capped mountains melting and flowing through our natural watersheds, moving from those high points to low points, and eventually flowing into our valley area. But the story map's not just for all of us water nerds, that's what I like to call ourselves, but in this built environment section, teachers and urban planners and real estate folks can find some really interesting materials to look at. I wanted to lay some groundworks for a possible scenario. So if you think back early in Arizona's history, farmers and ranchers lamented the unpredictable water supplies that we had here from those untamed rivers. Which were often considered to be too thick to drink and too thin to plow. And so those early flow problems were solved by engineering, right? Most residents here in the valley know that dams and reservoirs were built to ensure a predictable water supply. And history was really made here in the construction of these dams, which were considered engineering marvels at the time. And this new gray infrastructure helped tame the West and improve lives and even fostered more westward expansion. So next slide, Susan. So you can see here, it expand we did, and the built environment section is a great place to see how population growth might impact our watersheds. And as you can see from this slide, expansion continues to this day at a kind of an unexpected rate, I would say. Just in the past 40 years, the population of Phoenix has more than doubled, and it's still growing. Phoenix is now the 5th largest city in the United States. So next slide, please. But the growth hasn't really slowed, and you can see from these graphs, which are all in the story map, expansion still continues in the suburbs. And here's just a few examples. Again, these are all within the last 40 years. So Buckeye, over a 2,400% increase in growth. Goodyear, over a 3,200% increase in growth. Next slide, please. And then we go over to Surprise, in over 3,600. Oh, back up one. So yeah, Surprise is over 3,600%, Gilbert over 4,600%. And so this is all really great information for city planners, educators, real estate agents, even historians. It's really, information for everybody. And one question that might arise from this section is whether or not such large increases in growth over a short period of time is putting a strain on our water supplies. How does this impact our water supplies both now and in the future? And it could be a great discussion point for students. So next slide, please. And if we look at the built environment and then climate change, moving into that section, we learned that a massive increase in expansion has also caused a lot of problems, but maybe some opportunities, as we'll discuss later. Most people understand that urban landscapes with strip malls and minimal vegetation, big impervious pavement areas become points for pollution. Rainfall flowing over these areas carry contaminants like motor oil and antifreeze and brake dust and pet waste, and they go through storm drains and generally empty into dry riverbeds or waterways that's untreated. So it's really an unhealthy situation. And this chart that we have here, the large amount of pavement creates what we call an urban heat island effect. And as we see in this chart, there has been a 0.7 degree Fahrenheit increase in heat per decade over the last 30 years. So if you multiply that together, it's a 2.1 degree increase in heat in just the last 30 years in the Phoenix area. And most climatologists are worried about a worldwide temperature increase of 1.5 degrees Fahrenheit, and we've already exceeded that in just 30 years. So it's something to keep in mind. Next slide, please. And during the same time frame, our precipitation has decreased 1.19 inches. We don't have much rainfall here anyways. It's usually between 6 to 8 inches per year in the Phoenix area. So you couple that increase with heat and the decrease in precipitation, there's some pretty significant things going on in this area. So just these couple of slides show some really important information, which can be the basis of civic discussions for all Valley residents just within the story map. So next slide, please. So, but all is not lost. We want to end on a positive note here before we go on to Nick. Popping back into the built environment section again, we see that communities all across the state are recognizing the impacts of increased growth, reduced precipitation, climate change, and these cities are using forward-thinking green infrastructure techniques to capture some of the vast amounts of stormwater that otherwise would be lost through those storm drains and head out to the untreated areas, and start putting them to good use. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll show you a few images of some projects. So up in, we've highlighted just a few things, but if you go on to the story map, there's a pinpoint button. You just click there and it'll take you right to the site with some extra details on each project. But just briefly, just so you can see, up in Flagstaff at NAU, they have detention basins which hold water, help irrigate the athletic field, which now sits on top of that, that area. Prescott's got a number of bioswales throughout the city, as well as rainwater harvesting projects, detention basins. Phoenix, we try to showcase different types of green infrastructure, but Phoenix has got a lot of permeable pavement, porous concrete. They've got bioswales as well. Tucson is really well known for its xeriscaping, also very heavy on rainwater harvesting, as Keri was talking about earlier with Project Wet. And these are just a few examples of projects we are trying to include to show people that, yep, there is hope. We can make change, positive change for the built environment and climate change. So now I think we're going to turn it over to Nick, who's going to talk about a deeper level of our map.
Thanks, Sandra. So as we presented, each of these pieces comes together to tell the story of Arizona's watersheds. What's great about the story map platform is that it allows us to complement this multi-piece narrative with a mosaic of multimedia content. So we have images, videos, animations, and of course maps. So this creates a unique interactive experience for readers. They're able to explore and engage and connect with the information in a personal way. So what I'd like to do is dive into a bit of detail and highlight a few of these features. Next slide, Susan. So the first feature is found in our Managing and Monitoring Water Resources section. Users can first explore Department of Environmental Quality's surface water assessments, and then they can move on and explore ADWR's groundwater site inventory. And then they arrive at this map, which is displaying USGS and NOAA stream gauges. So what's really neat is that flow measurements are live. They are constantly updated. So users can explore streams nearby, or maybe they're interested in taking the kayak out on the Salt River. There's an additional link to snow water equivalents from the Natural Resources Conservation Service. So the connections between watersheds, snowfall, and surface water outlined in the narrative are just further reinforced through these maps and real-time information. Next slide, please. So the next feature I would like to share, it's a map. It's included in the fire-focused section, and it displays fires over time. So this is a great visual feature that again complements the narrative, reinforces concepts that were introduced. We're seeing that the frequency and intensity of fires has increased dramatically over time, due in part to the overgrown and unchecked conditions. We're learning that drought and climate change are just exacerbating the problem. So the time loop is set to automatically begin, but users can also take control and explore specific decades and specific fire incidents. So they can see more details. The year the fire occurred, the number of acres burned. And this fire information was retrieved from the National Interagency Fire Center, which compiles data sets from all of the different organizations listed here: Forest Service, BLM, the National Park Service. Next slide, please. So Sandra presented some green infrastructure projects that are happening around the state. So with the story map, we're able to enhance the learning experience with a guided tour of this information. So for each project, we can show readers where it is on a map, and describe its significance to the narrative, and bring it to life with images. So readers can scroll through and explore the map all at their own pace, and this creates just another interactive and engaging experience. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, this project tells a critical big picture story about Arizona's watersheds, the interconnected parts, the organizations involved, the many impacts, and the outlooks. But it is more than just a story. It's a resource in and of itself. And there's lots of opportunities to connect students and readers to additional sources for even more learning opportunities. It's also a call to action. As you see, we've included many ways to get involved, from conservation programs to science activities and organizations to volunteer with. So we truly believe that the actions of our readers do make all the difference. So I hope you will do some exploring yourself and share this story with others.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I was just going to say a big thank you to everyone for tuning in, and a big thank you to DWR for hosting the webinar and letting us debut the story map. We really hope that you all find it a valuable resource.
Thank you so much, Susan, Sarah, Sandra, Rebecca, Nick, and Keri. We have about 7 minutes left, and I would like to open the floor for questions. But before I wanted to say something, I really like what Nick mentioned about each presenter showing a different puzzle piece that tells a whole story. And it's great how the Kyle Center story map and the resources offered by the AZ project, but also work as bigger puzzle pieces that come together to offer comprehensive local educational resources. So we really appreciate your time and presentation here with us today. And with that, does anyone have any questions? You can also write them in the chat or unmute yourself. Okay, so we don't have questions in the chat or from the audience, but I do have a question. One is for Keri. Keri, you mentioned that there are partnership opportunities available with Project WED. Can you kind of let the audience know what would be the best way to approach you or any Project WED staff members for partnerships?
Yeah, so we really don't do anything without partners. We're very stakeholder driven, and we do partner with people all over the state, and we have a vested interest in our state. We all love our state, and a big part of that's water. And so those partnerships drive everything that we do. And I think the best way at this point, until we get the new website out, which is again the end of June, is to use the emails that we have. We also have active social media. We have a Twitter feed, and we have Facebook, we have Instagram. And so, yeah, please do engage with us. We would really love to talk about new projects. We love that.
Sounds good. Could you pop in the chat some of those links so people can
yes.
approach you guys? And well, I do have another question for the Kyle Center team and the Storymap team. It is a completely new tool, correct? Awesome. That's so exciting. And how do you see the story map complementing that information readily available through the blueprint?
Like I said, as part of our design process, we wanted to tackle, from the experts that we heard all around Arizona, we wanted to to provide resources for the most important topics that we could tell the story of, provide resources for. And so that's exactly what we've done here. It complements that whole design process and just providing this comprehensive toolkit that the blueprint that it is. And like I said, we have 4 that we've already story maps that we've already developed, and we have more to come. One's going to be on Arizona reuse. That's coming out really soon. And we have the new groundwater level change up, which I am beyond excited about. That's going to be released at the end of the month. But all of these really fit together to tell the big picture story of water and provide the resources that are needed to make better decisions. That's how I see it working.
Thank you. And Keri, do you see opportunities for Arizona Project Wet using the story map in different in-school activities or in classroom activities?
Oh, most definitely. You know, I mean, it's all about students getting interested and digging into content themselves, and that's what the story map does. So it's beautiful activation of learning and engagement, because at each one of those maps or interactive pieces that Nick was showing, there's I mean, you could spend, you know, a half an hour on some of those things exploring, you know, really digging in. So it's great that we have this resource where everything is right there. We'll definitely be using it.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And I have a comment in the chat. They say, great and exciting presentations. Thank you so much. I see you added the information, Keri, and I know Sandra added her email address, and Keri also added her email address. Rebecca, would you like to talk a little bit more about the National Forest Foundation resources or information, please?
Yeah, in the story map, we have some additional links to get more connected to our organization. And then in the chat, if you're interested in following our work in Arizona, I have an Instagram account here and then nationally. And we are a national nonprofit established by Congress to be the official nonprofit partner to the U.S. Forest Service. So we're really dedicated to connecting the American public to national forests and grasslands. And all of the work I do here in Arizona and New Mexico really aligns opportunities to make those connections personally, as well as doing work on the ground to improve watersheds across Arizona and New Mexico. So thanks so much for letting me be part of this team. It's been amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you all. And do you have any other comments you would like to add before we finish? We have 1 more minute.
I just want to say Rebecca Davidson is a great friend of education. She was on a project and she chose to give her time to teachers and come in and help us. And so it's just been wonderful to work with this good team.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I almost kind of miss it already.
That sounds great. Thank you so much to everyone. And with that, we'll finish 1 minute early, and we really appreciate all you being here. Oh, one more thing. Our next upcoming webinar is the Principles of Waterwise Landscaping, and it's going to be on April 22nd, Earth Day, and it's going to also be at noon. So if anyone's interested, we look forward to having you there. We're going to have AMWA, the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, and the Desert Botanical Garden present. And that's all I have. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks so much.